I want to introduce Tim Mahlberg. Tim came to us as a fully fledged professional with great ideas to do a PhD. Tim has a background in, well, I shouldn't say that, right? But he's an organizational psychologist by training, which is useful. But he also has this other side that Sophie is channeling, a deep understanding for people. So he's a coach. He trains in leadership. He helps organizations develop new styles of working. He's authored a very influential SBI report on co-working, and he is the founder of NAP Village, NAP's co-working space down in Melbourne. And we're very happy to have Tim as part of the Disrupt Sydney community. And he's going to share some real interesting insights from his research on the professional superheroes, those people in organizations that are passionate about things that are often forgotten, but that bring value that organizations should harness. So Tim, take it away.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm really happy to be here. There's some amazing friends in the audience. I think it's always great to present in front of people who are part of your community. Here's some of the various identities that I perform, but above all, firstly, I am human. So I wanted to honour my very dear friend who passed away a few weeks ago, Natalie. And we were doing a lot of our PhD research together. So today I'm a little bit frail, a little bit emotional, I'm a little bit human, and I'm suffering with her loss. And I actually think rather than that being a weakness, it's one of the greatest strengths that we could ever have, to bring our humanity into our work. So here I am today working and acknowledging this incredible human being who I was very blessed to have in my life. We wrote and shared a lot of great memories together. And one of the things we shared as we were writing a paper on the existential PhD, which we were both doing, exploring liminality in industry academic partnerships, for a bit of a mouthful. What we shared was a love of memes. So we're going to do an academic presentation, and the whole thing is just memes. So I just thought I'd share just a couple with you here to kind of give you a bit of a sense of our weird sense of humour, where we kind of decide to, reject the norm of a PhD and really explore how do we bring ourselves into what we do, into our research. And both of us are doing PhDs, looking at that in between, worlds where people are right on the edge of organisations, and we are finding ourselves actually studying ourselves. And what's interesting for me right now is when you lose someone very close to you, that kind of D word that no one talks about, which is death, and how that really changes things around how you see the world. And for Nat was someone who I talked a lot about that and around, what's the point of all of this? And we've only got a short time in the world. So I just wanted to honour her as a Wonder Woman, someone who had this incredible strength and passion to, and also this intense curiosity and wonder in the world. And this is the superhero that I will always forever associate with her, and it was actually her desktop screensaver as well, so I thought that was appropriate. But what it leaves me with is some of the questions that we used to ask casually over coffee, every couple of days. Some of these questions maybe you haven't thought about before, but I think they're the ones that Nat would want to leave you with. And you'll see on her Instagram and Twitter the kind of things she thought about. I'm not going to answer these today, but these are the things that she leaves me as provocations, the questions that I bring into my research. I think they're very relevant because work is such a central part of who we are. We spend so much time there. And I think it should count. I think that's really important. And for me, I guess the holy grail of where I'm trying to head with my research is this Japanese concept of Ikigai. It's the intersection of what you're good at, what the world needs, what makes you money, and what you love. And I think this is kind of what, for me in my research, I'm really trying to find. And so, reflecting on my corporate life, and into my research, I went to the place that you would expect to find a beacon of passion and purpose, and where people are living their whole entire selves, corporate Australia. And I'm not going to mention any names, but the wonders of the open plan workplace with the white desks and the white walls and the glass and the concrete, where everyone can explore all of the creativity and of everything that they can bring and really bring their humanity. Being a little bit facetious, but I went into this organisation and reflected on my own experience, and I went in deep and I talked to the people. I got to hang out with them. I love that term that Sophie used before, hanging out deep and exploring the serendipity, watching them at work, attending their events. And I found these really interesting people. They were people that in some ways reflected my own journey, but they weren't just the consultant or the auditor or the person who's kind of playing that role that they've been paid to do. They were much more than that. They were the RedGummybear. And they're employees who are kind of engaging around areas that they were really passionate about, but they weren't on their job descriptions. They were outside anything that was formally required from them. They were working beyond their formal work role. And they were using work to define themselves in different ways, ways that were undefinable by anyone but themselves, drawing on what really mattered to them. And partly that was because they were unsatisfied with the experience that work was giving them. So they were carving out spaces for them to do these other things. And often they were using these different online and face-to-face spaces to do that as well. And they were using it to express themselves quite authentically. And I was like, this is really cool. This is a whole new community. And so I went out and so I called that something. I said, well, we have our formal work identity, and these guys are doing something a bit different. So I'm going to call that an alter identity performance. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on what that looks like, but I will have some stuff on my website if you want to go and have a look later on. But this is where you're getting people who are, tax auditors. They're workshop facilitators. They're the data crunchers and the coders, or the researchers, and they're doing these other things which are really, really cool. They're connecting people across the organisation and enhancing the serendipity and the new projects that can come from that. They're bringing philosophy into the workplace, much the same as what Natalie did in her academic endeavours in life. They were helping to navigate the weird and wonderful spaces and like the ambiguity like Sophie was talking about before. And not only do that, but actually translate that into something that is meaningful and matters to the organisation. Or they're exploring that kind of these weird and wonderful futurism intersections between technology and humanity, and looking way beyond the kind of 2 to 3 year strategies that most organisations look at. And so my research questions, just briefly, I wanted to explore how people are doing this. And what does this mean for the organisation, both in regards to the work that still needs to be done by that individual, but also what the organisation expects more broadly to be the employee and maybe breaking that mould. I'm not going to go into all that today, so what I'm going to do today is just give you a little bit of my insights and where I'm at this point of the journey. And there's 3 things that I think are really exciting. The first one is around these individuals who are redefining self at work. What does it mean to be and belong and dwell in the workplace? Becoming more than just the title they're given. Bringing in new skills and perspectives that haven't been uncovered or explored in this context. Navigating ambiguity, challenging assumptions, bringing in empathy and emotion. God forbid we actually be human in our workplace. And as I mentioned earlier, how that can be a real strength that we can bring. And importantly, discovery and learning. Connecting with new communities and not just creating new ones inside the organisation, but going way beyond that. And this notion of permeability, where the boundaries are kind of being crossed and ideas are flowing from inside and outside. And finally, how these people are actually curating the knowledge and relationships within the organisation. And I've just got one quote for this one, which is really cool. I think my alter identity gave me an avenue for expression because I had to mould myself a lot in the corporate world. My alter ego was an avenue for my psyche to voice itself. The second thing I found is this notion of dwelling on the edge of the organisation. So this idea of identifying as outliers and outcasts, and actually in some cases that's something being really proud of, but as you can imagine, that actually creates some conflict as well. But this notion of being okay with not fitting in, and that actually being a part of your identity as well. Rejecting the structural formalities, that kind of getting in the line and to get the promotions that everyone does in organisations and going, that's not for me. Experiencing conflict and sometimes embracing it, but obviously we're only human, so some of them really struggle with that. This notion of a connected fringe network, and this is just a very quick little picture to show the ones in the dark green are the people that I spent time with. The other ones were people that became important as I discovered, and you'll see there's no real hierarchy here. There's people that are all connected, but this helps to legitimise the work they're doing outside of their formal work role. And I'll give you another quote. I'm like purposefully the ultimate outcast because that's the brand that I've created. I'm someone who actually doesn't fit in anywhere. I don't have a home. Sometimes I'm like, well, that's cool. I can kind of fit in here. And that's fine. It's exhausting, but it's fine. I think that really speaks to this sort of emotional labour that goes on where, you know, in some ways you're taking on a whole other identity and having to juggle two, and what happens from there. And the third one I wanted to share with is around the future makers, this notion that these are the people who have a longer term vision for the organisation that perhaps their leaders don't. They have this sense of custodianship that they feel responsible in some way to bring about a different future and bring others along with them. They're finding these new ways of unlocking capability that maybe formal mechanisms such as talent management aren't doing that, and they're doing this informally or even intuitively. They're driven by impact beyond the organisation into society. And I have a quote, but it's... Oh, here we go. I was still looking at the future 5 or 10 year horizons where executives might not be aware of where they should be. But I think I went a little bit too deep because my research led me to thinking about what does this business look like in the year 2045. I've literally come into a candy shop and can do anything I want. I can pull an economist here, an actuary there. I can pull this guy to make video and boom, there is this incredible model of the future that's highly contentious and challenging. There's a sense then that there's agitation where they had all of the right ingredients to create this incredible future for the organisation and world, but they couldn't because of profit and loss structures getting in the way. And so with the topic today is around raging against the machine, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of conflict that comes out, and I've definitely found a lot of that in my research. And here's just 3 quotes I wanted to share with you. We were almost like a militia within the organisation, this idea of a connected fringe network sort of operating in the shadows to try to do what they really want to do. You see the machinery of the organisation is that you get spreadsheets of people and then you get roles and you're just plugging holes. But for me, you can't just plug me in a hole. If I change the machine that changes machines, I have achieved my purpose in life. This is real hey, it's awesome. I love it. Right? These people are my inspiration. And so here's my token academic slide to show that I can do academia. It's very to show the emerging story. And what I want to show here just quickly is how these ultra identities are entering the organisation, emerging through it, exploring themselves and discovering themselves in there, establishing them and their brand and their impact, and then embedding into the organisation or exiting, which is often what I found. And a number of the people I spent time with had left the organisation. So you'll see here just some of the factors. I'm not going to go into them here, but you know, this talk is really just to kind of titillate and get you to read my thesis later. Hopefully there's more than 3 people who will read it. So, but I'll have some of this on my website so you can have a little bit more reflection there as well. But what I just wanted to share is these various elements that I found across all of my people, which led to balance or conflict. So balancing the aspects of themselves and the organisation and identity and belonging. Whether there's a conflict between the two with aspects of themselves, or there's conflict in aspects with the organisational identity. And there's really 3 outcomes from here. 1, they create an ongoing role, so they're actually successful. 2, they keep their main role, but they sort of keep the other part hidden. Or 3, they leave. And as you can imagine, I'm finding instances of all of those. So, why does this matter? Well, it matters for individuals. For people who are already doing this in organisations, it gives them a label, a name, like the entrepreneur, for example. It gives them a sense of validation and helps them with their own self-awareness. For talent management, this is a way of evolving work and roles. It's a way to engage people. It's a way to manage knowledge. For organisations, it's a way of surfacing new projects and opportunities, and to keep talent as well, and keeping the good people around, and being able to tap into new expertise. And it's important for the future of work. And I should mention, the future doesn't exist. We're talking about the present of work. We're talking about new forms of work that exist right now that we can tell those stories. And I think that's incredibly exciting. And so the way forward for you all, if you want to foster ultra identities in your organisation, consider yourself as a sponsor. Consider the people who are around you that might want to be exploring different parts of themselves in their work. Create the safe spaces, whether that's online or offline. Engage with your leaders, and heaven forbid, try to engage people in culture or HR. I know it's hard, I used to work in there. And if this sounds like your story as an individual here today, I invite you to hold your purpose and your mission and try to find ways of engaging with it. Establish a brand around it, put it online, tell the story, create a sandpit, whether that's in a dev space like the sandbox or in other spaces as well. Find your tribe who you can engage with. And finally, try to bring your boss along. I know it's not easy, but I think that's really important that they can be a part of an unfolding new narrative for them as well. And I'd love to connect with you.